also tell me a little bit about how you knew where the Cascade or the Cloud Gap.
Count Cap Inn.
Yeah.
Well, I had heard about Cloud Cap Inn many years ago, and when I found the time in the 60s, after I moved up here, I went up to Parkdale and checked it out, and drove out there for the first time way back in the 60s, before it had been remodeled or repaired at all.
Huh.
And you could see the deterioration in the walls. The logs were some of them were just falling apart.
Well, that was beautiful today. It was just absolutely beautiful trip up there today.
The view of the Cascade Range north is magnificent beyond words, with Rainier standing up to the point where you could even see the foothills, and Mount Adams on one side, Mount St. Helens on the other side.
Yeah, you can't see those from Timberline, can you? Timberline's on the south.
That's right. No, you can't. All you can do from Timberline is look south to Mount Jefferson.
Okay. You know, that was a just absolutely gorgeous vista from up there. I'm glad we went up there. I want to go up there again sometime and visit that campground.
Yeah. The Cooper Spur Inn is certainly a nice stopping place to eat. It's with the original restaurant building built in the 30s. It's really a marvelous example of old style log construction.
Mm-hmm. What amazes me is how old the inn is up there at the top, though, going back to before the turn of the century.
I was a little bit mixed up on the dates he gave us. It says it was built on the sign that you have photoed of 1898.
1889. 1898? He
I
said
read
they were
it-
celebrating their 100th anniversary.
And so it had to have been 89. Well, no, there I had misread, I guess. That's right.
So,
I would have loved to have been there when and taken the stage up from Hood River.
but that was
That would have been an experience. Did he say 11 hours?
5 hours.
5 hours from Hood River, and 3 changes of horses on the way up.
Incredible. Well, it's amazing to me that they could get the road up, get the horses to pull something up that climb.
Oh, those 6 horses really had to buckle down, and I imagine that under the whip, even on those grades, they were moving at a fast pace.
Hmm. Absolutely incredible. Well, you know, it's been a really great trip out here this time. I had a chance to meet Harold for the first time and got him to tell me some stories about your all growing up out here in the far west. What was it like when you were growing up as a kid there?
Oh, on the outskirts of Portland. We were way out in the country. We had a general store there at the Stanley Station on the Interurban.
Where's that?
That was the old Portland Railroad, and which ran from Portland to Cazadero by way of Gresham, Estacada, so forth.
Uh-huh.
And
So where would Stanley Station be roughly today?
it would be about 60th Street, southeast.
And over about where? Foster? Sunnyside?
Let's see. Foster.
Okay.
It was east. No, it was south of Foster. South of Foster.
So it'd be somewhere around where Sunnyside is now?
Well, it was in between. In between.
Okay. You had quite a bit of acreage there, or just...
We were just on 1 acre, and Dad started the house in 1910,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived in a small barn. He erected a small barn to live in while he was building the house,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived there. Originally there was no electricity, no running water.
In the barn or the house?
In the house, at the property.
So you must have had an outhouse, huh?
Oh yes, definitely.
2-seater or 3?
2. And we had one oak tree on the place that was 52 foot tall, and all of us boys managed to climb to the very top of that tree.
Yeah, Harold talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah. And from the tree we could look down on the house and the yard, and I have pictures of that if you'd like to see them.
Okay.
A very nice stream. We could swim in it and enjoy ourselves. Fish, catch crawdads, and that was just below our house, between our house and the interurban.
Mm-hmm. Did you swim in that, or?
Oh yes, we swam in that all the time for years, and as we grew up there. But gradually, over the years, of course, it has become so polluted that it's not safe to be near it, really.
So what was it like growing up then? No running water, no sewage, outhouse. And you were one of the younger of the family.
Yeah, I was right in the middle of the children. Right in the middle. I had, there were 5 older, 6 younger. And the folks had come out to Oregon by train in 1903 and settled in Portland, just off Foster Road. And
Where did they come from?
Nebraska. They had been flooded out. Dad had been flooded out 3 years in a row on the, I think it was the Missouri River. And they just packed up and walked off, left the place, and came out here. Her father had a big farm, we would call it fairly big in those days, out at Beaverton. And I remember visiting out there when I was just a very small boy. In those days, Grandfather Danford could haul his produce by wagon, team and wagon, into Portland on the Willamette River ice in the wintertime.
Hmm.
There was no road over the hill then like we have today between Portland and Beaverton. We always had snow. We had snow every year, every winter, in those days too, which they don't have now. Very seldom do they have snow that stays on in Portland over 24 hours. But we used to go sledding.
Sounds like you had a pretty good time.
Yeah. I remember walking from our home to Milwaukee to high school all year long. The girls and I.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we would go cross country as much as we could to cut down on the distance through people's backyards and any other way we could get there.
So you went to Milwaukee High School?
For 1 year,
Uh-huh.
and the rest of the girls went there till graduation, and Alan graduated from Milwaukee High School.
Uh-huh. Where'd the girls graduate from?
They did also,
Okay.
but this was later. The older brothers, except Jesse, Harold, and Ralph, all went to Benson Tech in Portland, where I transferred to after my freshman year at Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
We were in an area that allowed us to go into the Portland district tuition free. Otherwise, we would never have been able to.
And then you went to Benson.
I went to Benson, and to get there, I walked a mile, at least, to the Errol Heights trolley.
Mm-hmm.
It was a free trolley that took us into Westmoreland, and we transferred then to the Selwood car, took us into town.
Mm-hmm. Lillian was telling me that the guys didn't do any housework at all.
No, Mother never expected the boys to work in the house. That was strictly for the girls.
So what'd you guys have to do? You just out having fun, huh?
Well, we always helped Dad around the place, or worked at odd jobs in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I at 14 up to Bend, Oregon, to work in a logging camp. Ralph was there. He was next older than myself,
Uh-huh.
and he was a rigger in the logging camp. And he said that there's work for me up there, so they sent me up. But I couldn't hack it. At 14, I just wasn't able to do the work.
Uh-huh.
And at 14, I saw my first man killed in the logging camp. It happened to be a fellow that was pulling on the cable right next to me when the whistle pump sent in the wrong signal. Instead of slack the main line, he said go ahead on the main line. And this man was a veteran, and he thought it was a mistake, and so he hung on to the hook at the end of the line, and the cable threw him up into the air higher than the spar tree. So he fell over 100 foot when he landed at the foot of the spar tree.
Probably broke his neck.
Oh, he was all broken up, completely,
Oh,
instantaneously killed.
but you did do more logging later.
Well,
You worked up at, what was the name of the place up toward the coast?
up at out of Vernonia, at Mist, Oregon. Later on, several years later, I worked one season in the woods
Mm-hmm.
on a rig-up crew. But I worked in the logging camp 30 days, and then Ralph suggested that maybe if I went to the wheat fields down at Wasco,
Mm-hmm.
I might find work because they were just starting the wheat harvest then. But when I got into Wasco, a fellow was looking for somebody to feed crusher on a rock crushing setup just out of Wasco. So he hired me to do that. And I worked there on the rock crusher for 2 weeks and then came home. I had just turned 15.
So that was quite a summer there.
Yeah.
So turning 15, so that's when you transferred to Benson then, that fall.
Yes.
Did that have something to do with your decision to transfer to Benson?
No.
You wanted a
I don't know why I transferred. Really, I couldn't tell you now.
Well, somehow or other you were
The boys had all, been ahead of me there, and
getting a technical
they
education.
enjoyed it. They liked it.
Couldn't you get a technical education at all at Milwaukee, or?
Woodworking, was the only technical work I could get there.
Mm-hmm. And at Benson, what could you get?
Oh, Benson, I took pattern making, electric shop, foundry. Oh, plus all the college credit subjects.
Mm-hmm. And then after you graduated from Benson, where'd you go?
Went up to Vernonia to work in the sawmill.
Okay.
I went to work there. It was the big new long well, it was a big brand new steam electric mill, and
Well, that was in a mill then, not in the field.
that's right. I worked in the mill. I started to work in the yard, just yard work, and then they pulled me into the mill doing cleanup. And then they gave me a job called turkey trotting,
Uh-oh.
which was in the lumber sorting shed. And this is in the stacker, where they stack the lumber for the dry kilns. And when there came an opening for a stacker, then I was next in line and I became a stacker at the fabulous salary of $6 a day, which was tops for anybody but a sawyer almost.
Hmm.
I'd never in my life received that kind of money, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What year was that? Well, you graduated from Benson when?
That was about 27, maybe 27, something like 27, 28 in there.
Okay. And Jesse and Ralph had all...
No, it was earlier than that. I left high school in 24, so it must have been 25 or 26.
Now, had Jesse and Ralph and uh, Harold left already for Florida
Um,
at that point?
I don't know exactly when they left for the East Coast. Jesse, Harold, and Ralph didn't go to Florida originally. They went to the East Coast to work as carpenters
Mm-hmm.
north of Florida. But after that, they did join Jesse in Florida for a short time.
Mm-hmm. Now, Harold recounts a rather interesting trip
Yes.
in which they got to Florida with 23 cents in their pocket between them, and the toll was 25. Guy asked them, "Is that all the money you have?" After they'd gone through their pockets 2 or 3 times for him, and decided to let them go for free, and they kept the money.
I didn't hear that one.
So then, after working the summer and the year, how long did you work there at the mill? A year or just
I
the summer?
actually quit the mill with the thought of going to the University of Oregon at Eugene.
Mm-hmm.
And I did finally get down to Eugene and went one term, the one fall term, then my money ran out. So I had to come back home.
And that was in 26?
No, this is in the little further along.
27.
A little further along. 28 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the figures just exactly. Then, after staying out of school for a while, I decided to go down to the normal school at Monmouth. So I borrowed $50. That's all I could lay my hands on, and went down to Monmouth and made it through the first year by working on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year, Edith and I married.
You met her there at Monmouth, huh?
No, I met her in Salem.
Mm-hmm.
She was introduced by a common friend.
Who was that?
Enid. Can't think of her last name. She was a teacher also.
Interesting. So tell me, what was your dad like?
Dad was a very quiet, soft-spoken man. Never swore. He was a carpenter. He learned his trade through International Correspondence School.
Hmm.
And
And then he taught all of the boys carpentry.
that's right. They got all their training, Alan and Harold and Ralph, from him. Jesse was an architectural student at Benson, and he was so good that he was an instructor at Benson before he graduated from there. He left, he graduated then from Benson and went directly to University of Oregon and graduated in 3 years from the University of Oregon. He immediately went back to MIT and got his master's. and then went into set himself up in Florida as an architect. The rest of the boys went their various ways.
Tell me more about your dad. Where did he come from?
Uh, Dad never revealed to us his, as far as I know, his lineage. I did understand that his mother was a Dutch woman with her name had the prefix of Van, which I don't understand. But Dad believed or had been taught that all boys it was compulsory that they stay with the family and work. And when they were age 21, then their father was to set them up on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his philosophy until we became able to go to high school. It was his wish that, as far as I understand it, that we were not to go to high school. We were to go to work, to start helping provide for the family.
Yeah.
But Mother objected, and she had her way. We all went on to high school.
Hmm. Your mother must have been quite a woman,
Well, yes.
raising 12 kids.
She was very well thought of in the community. She served as president of the local PTA for one term.
She was one of quite a few kids too.
Yes, she was the eldest child in her family. She had two brothers that served in the Portland Fire Department until retirement.
The sisters.
Well, my eldest sister Vera, very lovely person, became personal secretary to one of the Skaggs brothers in Portland, the Skaggs grocery chain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many years she worked for them, or this beyond my recollection. My younger sister's married.
Vera never married?
Yes, she had two girls, Barbara and Carol. You know Barbara. You did know Carol too, didn't you? Sure you did. Sure, she was out at the trailer park. Played around with you kids. Yeah.
Now, your mother, Millie, had a couple brothers and some sisters too.
Yes. Jim, Mabel, and Hazel. Both younger than she.
And Mabel is the mother of the two ladies that were at the family reunion.
Yes.
Their names are
Frances was one of them,
and Marge.
and Marge, yeah. I guess so.
There were a riot talking about taking the trolley into the zoo
Yeah.
and doing that when their mother didn't really want them to.
Yeah.
What happened when they brought guys home? What happened when you brought girls home? Or you guys did your children not date very much during adolescence?
We didn't. We had neighbors. There were also Christian Scientists, which we were quite intimate with. And in the summertime, we always had picnics together on Johnson Creek at Errol Station. And the Thurmans and the Derrys were the two families. The Derry family, I think there were four girls and one boy. And there seemed to be quite a bit of natural affinity between all of us. And we certainly enjoyed those picnics on Johnson Creek there at Errol Station in the summertime.
Was Don the youngest?
Don, no, there are three younger than Don. Helen, Doris, and Elmer were all younger than Don.
Yeah, he was the youngest of the boys.
Yes.
So what was it like for Don after you guys had been around for a while?
Oh, I
How mu-
don't remember. You see,
He was quite a bit young.
when I was 14, I left home almost.
And how old was Don at that point?
Oh, he was probably 7 or so, something like that.
So there was quite a gap.
Yes, you see, there was Lillian and Lucille. Now, wait a minute. He's younger. Yeah, he's younger than Lucille. And then, but just older than Helen. That's right. So, but anyway, he was at least 6 or 7 years younger than myself. So I can't tell you much about him. You know, he was just a chappy.
Oh, what was he like before you left home?
Don?
Mm-hmm.
Just a little kid playing around on tricycles and whatnot. It's interesting to know that he was interested in the State Reserve. What do you call it?
National Guard or?
National Guard, yes. And the minute he was old enough, you know, to get into the National Guard in any way, he joined. That was the first organization he ever joined. And he was a member of that when he at the time he joined the, got a job with the Portland Police Fire Department, rather. And after he'd been in the Portland Fire Department for 3 years, I believe, World War II started in Europe. And he immediately enlisted in the American Army
Mm-hmm.
and spent 2 years training in the Southwest.
Now,
He has more stories to tell you than anybody in the family if you could get him to talk about the war. He went across the channel with Patton and stayed with him through the French campaign.
Patton, he was old blood and guts, wasn't he?
Blood and Guts Patton, yeah.
huh?
He served as a messenger all through the war for headquarters. That was originally with the Third Army.
Now, what was Harold doing at this time? Was Harold in the Army?
Harold answered the call when he was in Austin, Texas, and because he was a rancher, he was not eligible for enlistment or for draft. So he became a trainer in boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
He taught rifle shooting, for one thing. He was an expert marksman.
You said something about us being a scout?
Actually, it was just one of the exercises that they had given them in training, and he showed his ability to work as in tracking. Of course, this is something that was never used by the War Department in the World War II.
Yeah, you were telling me that he was the only person that did what?
Well, during the exercise in training, where they sent out targets to be tracked and brought in, he was the only one of the squad that stayed with it and brought in his man. All the rest of the boys failed.
Hmm.
And he stayed with that, tracked him, and brought him in during the following night after the exercise started.
Interesting. Told me about when he was in the oil fields. Something about.
Well, he went into the oil fields when they were just opening up.
That'd be in the 30s.
Oh, no, this...
32.
Yes, it would have been in the late 30s, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
in Texas. He never did tell me too much about that. He spoke about the real rough character of the whole setup, and he spoke of the prostitutes working right out in the open, and how they were finally rounded up by the Texas Rangers and taken away from where he was working.
Yeah. And then he had poker game going.
Oh,
Is that part of those days at the oil fields or what?
no, this was later when he was settled in Austin, Texas, as a builder. He started there as a carpenter during the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
To show you something of his character, uh, he always was a competitor,
Mm-hmm.
and to excel in his work, he had to have strength and staying power. So, when he was working as a carpenter, at the end of the day's work, he would go to a big springs in that area of Austin. I don't know just exactly where it is, but the water was cold in the springs, and he would stay in that water until until it invigorated him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long it took or what, but he'd go there every day after work, and it kept him in such shape physically that the heat couldn't debilitate him.
Oh, okay. What about all these poker games, though?
Oh, while he was living in Austin, before he bought the ranch, he became a building contractor and operated from the boarding house where he lived. And one winter, while he was there, doing this, he operated a poker game in his room, and he told me that it was very successful. He never let a loser go away broke. He always gave anybody that lost his roll at the table, he gave him going away money. And when he closed the game in the spring, he had enough money to buy a new car.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Later, two bunco card players invaded the university campus and started taking all the money away from the students at poker. So he decided to stop it, and he took them on single-handed and broke them. And
We don't talk about how.
run them out of town. That's a fact.
Either he was a real good poker player.
Well, he was. He was the best poker player around. It's amazing to me that he didn't do more of it himself, but apparently it was against his grain to depend on something like that. He was a builder.
Yeah, I'm not a gambler.
That's right. He knew the odds. He could play the game to win, but he was a builder, and that's what he enjoyed doing.
Well, it sure sounded like it when I talked to him a little bit last week.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the war years for you.
Well,
I mean, here you had
I
two kids on your hand, and
I was
family.
had worked for the State Highway Department for 7 years in Salem, and had just taken an appointment to the U.S. Post Office when they started up the shipyards in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a great need for labor in the shipyards. I was called in by a federal official, like everybody else working around there, and told that if I'd be subject to the draft if I didn't get into the shipyards or
Mm-hmm.
war work. So we sold our home there on Evergreen in Salem and bought a home in Mount Tabor. And I did go to work in the shipyards. I worked in the Vancouver shipyard, which was a Kaiser company, on the first 16 aircraft carriers. And then I transferred to a Navy ship in Portland at Willamette Iron Works.
Mm-hmm.
And stayed there till the end of the war as an expediter.
What's an expediter?
Well, an expediter is one who makes sure that the ship materials arrive, or are ordered and arrive and so forth on time.
So those were pretty tough years then.
Well, actually, I wouldn't call them tough, for me anyway. It was just a job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we finally sold our place there in Mount Tabor and moved out onto Division Street at 157th, I got into hard work, building the trailer park.
Yeah, that was, I bet.
Yeah. I had to do all the work myself. We didn't have money to hire any of the work done. In fact, I wouldn't have known how to supervise a job like that anyway. I just had to go ahead and learn how to do it myself. And so I did contact I had to contact the state inspectors, building inspectors. I had to answer to them for construction of the trailer park. And fortunately, I didn't have any accidents, or they okayed everything. And the park is still operating today, expanded, but still basically the same park.
Yeah, out there on 156th and Division.
Right.
Yeah. I even remember some of that. I had pictures of me in the snow with some of the dogs out there.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
We one of the nicest things about it was the people that came into the trailer park. They were all congenial, and we enjoyed them. particularly the elderly retired people.
Well, I remember a croquet court where there was a lot of action in the summer.
We played croquet there, yes, and sat around, shot the breeze. They they seemed to enjoy it there. It was quiet. It wasn't a big place. You knew your neighbor, and everybody just treated everyone just like a friend.
Yep. Well, some good days there, and some long days there, I guess. Some good stories. I'll have to ask Harold about some of these. What's interesting is that Harold says, "Well, I don't remember. I think he was still in school when I moved away."
Yeah.
And so, a little bit of reaction to you, like you're suggesting, gee, Don was still
Yeah.
too young when I went to work at 14.
Well, I'll tell you this. Now, I inherited Harold's bicycle.
You did?
Yes. Oh, beautiful bicycle that Harold had used as a messenger boy in town. He worked for Western Union for a while,
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
while he was going to Benson.
Yep, those were the good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your parents sounded like they were really wonderful parents. With their
They
hands
were.
full.
They were. They gave everything they had for the family.
When did you move to Pleasant Valley?
Well, in a way, that's a sad story. The folks lost the home. They on a foreclosure after all of us had left. All the boys, the younger girls were still there, and so they were forced to move off of that. And Ralph and Alan came back and helped them move to, and they rented the poor place that had been a dairy. And we stayed there. I stayed there and worked part of the time, for a while. And then Alan was working as a foreman at Bonneville Dam, and so they decided to buy a ranch, a farm rather, in Pleasant Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they happened to go out there. After Bonneville Dam was complete, then Alan stayed on at the farm and helped Dad run it until they sold it.
Which is when?
Well, Alan went from there to San Francisco to work on the World's Fair in San Francisco. And that was about 1940 or 38 to 40, around in there someplace. I don't know the dates.
So how long did they work the farm then? About 2 years, is that?
Oh no, more than that. No, they were there on the farm. Oh, I think they were on the farm about 6 years.
From,
I don't know your dates. I can't recall them.
but you'd already gone off to normal school.
Yes, yes. And married. They were still there in 42 when we moved into Portland. Uh, uh, so Alan didn't go to San Francisco till after 42. As I recall, you see, now these dates,
Well, was Alan not in the service?
No, Alan never went into the service.
Was he, is he the
Next,
oldest?
no, Vera was the oldest. Then she was born in 98, Jessie in 1900, Alan in 1902, Harold 1904, Ralph 1906, I in 1908. Way back there, before time started.
Well, then, do you remember World War One?
Yes.
You were in high school about then.
Well,
See, 8, and no, you were in 4th grade.
see, I was,
Because you were 10 years old.
let's see, 1908 and 6 is 19. I was 6 in 1914 when it started in Europe. And I guess that's when it started in Europe, as I recall. So I was pretty young.
So I don't really remember too much about it. Harold was too young to go in because he was only 14.
Jesse was the oldest boy, just got cut off. Just as the war was ending, he was turned down because they weren't taking him anymore. He just became of age at that time.
And so Alan was too old for World War II.
Yes.
Where is Alan now?
Alan is in Santa Barbara with his wife.
Phyllis.
Phyllis, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And their 3 children and grandchildren.
Interesting. Just fascinating. What'd the girls do during the war?
Lillian was married. She married a man while he was still in the Navy.
Frank.
Frank, you know, Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
Lucille went to California, and she married a local California boy.
John.
Yeah. Doris went down there and worked for the Air Force up in the desert.
What'd she do?
Oh, she was in the office some way, doing, I don't know what she was doing.
As a civilian?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about Helen?
Helen worked for the telephone company. She was a what do you call it? She
Operator?
no, no. She worked.
So, supervisor.
Oh, she took incoming calls in the on the telephone company. Complaints, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, she was a contact person.
Okay, public relations.
PR, I imagine.
Yeah.
You would say.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Well, Richard,
We'll have to
now
do
you've
more.
got all the family history.
Hardly. Only a little piece of it. I haven't
Pretty
figured out what to
sketchy.
ask yet.
Pretty sketchy.
Boy.
Lillian was telling me about the times they went into Johnson Creek when they weren't supposed to.
Oh,
Uh-huh. One of them nearly drowned. Till Harold fished, who was it? Fished her out or fished him out?
no, Harold didn't do it. A neighbor boy saw them.
Uh-huh.
And it jumped in. It was Helen and Donald.
And Donald almost drowned.
Uh, one of them was in the wagon, and I don't know how she got him into the creek, but he got into the creek somewhere or other down there.
So I think there are a whole lot more stories that I have yet to hear. But that'll have to wait till the next time.